Mr. Heng Chee, how?
Mr. Speaker, sir, thank you very much for allowing me to join the debate. And I wish to state right here that I fully support this year's budget. So when Singapore became independent, some of its key domestic socio-economic challenges were low levels of education for the general population, a young and growing working-age population that faced frustration over uncertain prospects, low wages, high unemployment of around 10% amid unstable industrial relations. And the workforce then was predominantly rank and file. 53 years on, our challenges are now different. Our education system prepares students for PMET jobs, and PMET employees comprise more than half our workforce. And a gig economy element is also growing. We now have a rapidly aging population and a workforce, local workforce, partly due to the baby boom generation effect. While our unemployment rate of 2% to 3% is much lower than that in 1965 in Singapore, or when we compare with most other countries currently, and our industrial relations stable, the rising impact of disruption caused by changing business models, technology, and global competition has significantly increased our risk of job obsolescence, or in some people call it jobsolescence, as well as job loss. General wage levels have risen, but there is a need to continue efforts to transform low-wage industries for better earnings and prospects. For Singapore as a whole, and for the labour movement, these changes and realities will dictate our priorities as we continue to pursue our mission to care for our population and to care and to value all working persons. For the labour movement, we continue to want to work closely with the government and with employers to develop that better future for Singaporeans. To that point, the three key priority areas of the labour movement to help Singapore and Singaporeans do better are, one, in the area of high age. And this is shorthand for the unavoidable aging of our local workforce and its implications. I'll speak more on this later. Secondly, low wage. Over the past several years, dedicated efforts by the tripartite partners have brought about hard-earned, tangible improvements in the terms of work for lower wage workers. The road ahead remains long and arduous, as structural improvements require sustained transformation of mindsets, skills, technology, and procurement practices on the part of employers, service buyers, workers, and regulators. Third, the double middle. Now, just because a growing proportion of the workforce comprises PMET jobs does not mean that every PMET employee is secure in his job. With changing technology alone, for example, artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, Manufacturing 4.0, robotics, and others, many long-standing routine PMET jobs will be redesigned or may be rendered redundant and be replaced by new roles and requirements. Add to that the continuing pressure to delayer and flatten organizations and to outsource jobs and functions to more cost-effective, cost-competitive countries, and we can see the need to help not only today's unemployed find jobs, but also to help those who may be more at risk of becoming tomorrow's unemployed to manage their risks. This will entail proactive tripartite partnership to spur transformation at the industry, company, and job levels, and to improve the conditions for prompt and seamless skills upgrading and conversion to take advantage of new income opportunities. They would also include enhancements to job matching and job switching machinery for both traditional and emerging ways to earn a living, as well as the corresponding safety nets to help the displaced find their feet again quickly. So my fellow Labour MPs will elaborate on these priorities in their budget speeches that follow. Labour MP Desmond Chu will speak of the value that youth will bring to our nation and share how the NTUC is reaching out to them even before they join the workforce. Touching on an issue concerning the double middle group, that is the middle income and middle age, and wherein there is a growing number of PMETs, my fellow MP, Patrick Tay, will share how we must value every such worker and how to keep them relevant. Labour MP Tanalashmi will call on all to value the family behind every worker, particularly for women, who often have to juggle between work and family commitments. With the rise of the gig economy, Labour MP Heng Chee will remind us not to underestimate the value that freelancers and self-employed bring to our economy. And while fellow LMPs, Labour MPs have touched on various worker groups, my Labour MP colleague Zainal Sapari will put the emphasis on the low-wage workers whose contributions we must continue to value. And as we all spend our time at the workplace, Labour MP Melvin Yong will speak on the value of the life of every worker and how we can render every workplace safer and healthier. So let me now elaborate on the high age area and argue why it is critical that we not allow ourselves to be blindsided by this aspect. So Singapore quietly entered a new era in 2018. For the first time in our history, the proportion of our citizen population below 15 years old equaled that of our citizen population above 65 years old. In years to come, there will be more citizens above 65 than there are those below 15. By one estimate, by the year 2030, the below 15 segment might constitute, say, 11% of the population, whereas the above 65 portion could be 27%. One might ask, so what? Well, that means that Singapore may be headed for a triple whammy if we are not careful. First, there will be the peaking of the citizen workforce around 2020, and then thereafter, plateau and perhaps a decline. Now, and that does not include attrition from the workforce due to skills obsolescence and mismatch. This shrinking of the citizen workforce will narrow the personal income tax base, adding strain to government revenues. Second, the shrinking citizen workforce and loss of relevant experience through retirement of older workers will impact the ability of companies to operate optimally, unless, of course, they are able to raise productivity, or perhaps if they could increase the proportion of foreign manpower in their workforce, or profitably and sustainably retain the services of mature workers longer. The constraint on company growth will in turn lead to lower than potential corporate tax contributions to government revenues. So that's the second whammy. And the third one, the growing senior segment of the population will lead to more social spending and support in healthcare and welfare if structural unemployment or downward pressure on the income among seniors increases. The combination of these factors will mean that the shrinking working population and companies will shoulder an increasingly heavier tax burden to support the reducing tax contribution from the senior population as they leave employment and as they incur higher living expenses linked to aging. In short, the earlier the older segment of our population ceases to be able to contribute economically, the earlier and more painful we can expect the tax increases that the working population and companies would have to bear in support. Conversely, the longer our mature workers can remain employed and earning, the more they can help contribute towards government revenues and also support their own needs, and thus helping to delay and reduce the need for the general taxpayers and younger citizens and companies to have to chip in earlier than necessary. And it is also for this reason that the tripartite partners have agreed over the years to extend first the statutory retirement age and then to introduce re-employment. And most recently, to raise the re-employment age ceiling from 65 to 67, effective July 2017. Now, this raising of the retirement or re-employment age to 67 actually was contained in the recommendations of the Tripartite Committee on the extension of the retirement age back in July 1997. And it is very important, but it is not something easy to do, and it took us 20 years to move from 60 to 67. So going forward, the question is what do we do, and whether this broad tactic of prolonging employment across the board by law is going to be as doable as in the past 20 years, or would it face additional challenges? Well, I would like to share that there are at least two specific considerations that we have to bear in mind going forward. Firstly, despite the improvement in general health condition of our population over the years, across-the-board statutory re-employment age increase would more likely encounter different constraints for different industries and occupation types as we go into higher age brackets. That said, investments in the use of assistive technology and age-universal process and job design and redesign must continue relentlessly so that we are able to compensate for the physical declines of the workforce to the greatest extent possible. And in this, schemes like WorkPro should continue and be refined to produce more substantive and pervasive outcomes wherever such opportunities exist so that we maximize this benefit. Secondly, and increasingly importantly, the threat to employability due to job obsolescence and skills mismatch. Hitherto, technology was used mainly to improve efficiency of work processes. Today, technology goes beyond that to drive business model revamps. What this means is that a person's job may change or may disappear much faster than before, not only because his company is not doing well, but because entire occupations, entire organizational layers, and how value is created, delivered, captured in an industry may fundamentally change. Some estimates say perhaps up to 25% of jobs in the current economy may be altered or displaced by technology in the coming 20 years. A person displaced for this reason will have a hard time finding a similar jobs because the job category itself may be fading. While this scenario may confront a worker of any age, the average older working person may face more and higher hurdles in the adaptation and switching process, on top of the ageist attitudes among some employers, and may be displaced out of the workforce long before reaching the re-employment age. Now, with such pervasive technology, rapid digitization, and changing business models, how can companies stay competitive while tapping on mature workers to bring the value, the insights, and the experience to the table? Could we try harder in making the workplace more conducive for mature workers to contribute? And how about training them to be more digitally aware and technologically competent, placing them in growth sectors? So when we travel to another country with a different plug and socket design for the appliances, now we all know that it would be very troublesome if our appliance does not have the right plug designed. So even if the appliance itself is functioning okay, you cannot use it because you cannot connect to the power source. And that is why we find the multi-adapter plug so useful on trips. Now, we also know that if we go to a country whose language we do not know, then we will encounter many difficulties, even to get very basic things done, or to have ourselves understood. Now, conversely, if we can understand and speak that language, then we will be as a duck takes to water. And this is the reality. I say this as an analogy for the employment and employability of working people of all ages, because increasingly it will be like becoming a multi-adapter plug and being able to understand and use the language of the place. Workers who can learn and adapt repeatedly in their working lifespans will last longer and earn better, whilst those who cannot and will not do so will face increasingly difficulties in employment and re-employment, regardless of whatever law you pass or which subsidies that the government may put. In this rapidly changing world of work, skills requirements change quickly with the flux of competitive business models, technology, and innovation. Old areas of the economy fade away even as new opportunities emerge. Some growing job areas would be brought about by this very aging of the population, such as in personal support services, healthcare, elder care. That is why working persons must keep up with the changing requirements or else find themselves of the wrong plug design and become powerless. In this context, workers need to and want to learn what are the skills at risk and what are the skills they need to pick up and where they can do so efficiently and cost-effectively. This is where the expeditious implementation of the industrial transformation maps for key industries will be critical. Businesses and industry associations must take the lead with the support of the government and the labor movement, and to do this without delay. Here, I want to remind everyone not to unconsciously fall into the mind trap of thinking that industry transformation involves only the younger working population or only the local population. A chain is as strong as its weakest link, and a company's workforce is typically both young and mature, both local and foreign. if a company or industry focuses transformation only on one part of its workforce and neglect or dismiss the other parts, actually it's shortchanging itself. If Singapore therefore neglects the segment of its workforce that is growing the fastest, and here for the local workforce that is the mature segment, then it is downright counterproductive for these reasons that I've discussed earlier. And it will be both from the perspective of the company sacrificing its own potential capability, as well as practically inviting higher corporate tax burdens on itself sooner. Now, for all the above reasons, and given that the recommendation of the Tripartite Committee on the extension of retirement age to 67 has been fully implemented, there is therefore a cause, in my view, for another Tripartite Committee to convene to consider the road ahead now beyond 67. I therefore call for the forming of such a Tripartite Committee, and I just would like to propose that its terms of reference could include the following. Firstly, to assess the effective retirement age, which is not the same as the statutory retirement age since 1993, and recommend measures to further raise the employment rate of older workers. And this includes how the implementation of the industry transformation maps must include the upgrading of mature workers and the speeding up of progress toward more age-universal workplaces. Secondly, and in the light of the pervasive adoption of the performance-based employment model over the years, to actually consider whether there's still a need for a statutory retirement age or for a ceiling to be applied to the re-employment age band. And thirdly, that if the statutory retirement age and the re-employment age band is still assessed to be necessary, to then clarify the conditions under which the re-employment ceiling of 67 could be further raised, and then to what long-term targeted age. I further call for a special focus on confidence building for mature workers in digital awareness and competencies, in working with robotics, and in using data smartly to finesse the supply of and demand for goods and services. This is the new language in the world of work, and we should proactively and aggressively promote their learning and use, just as we had in promoting basic literacy and numeracy through best and wise causes, and then IT confidence through the National IT Literacy Program, or NITLP, in years past. The newly introduced Skills Future for the Digital Workplace is a good example of what needs to be done in this regard, and I hope and call for more to be done. Facility and adeptness are not innate attributes, inborn. They come from exposure and usage. So finally, I urge the government to specifically work out recruitment plans and conversion programs to induct mature workers into the growing areas of healthcare, elder care, and aging in place. Now, these are areas of growing job opportunity, and they also allow our mature workers actually to play to their strengths. The NTUC and the labour movement stands ready to actively partner and support the government and the business community in all these areas to build this critical dynamic employability in our older working persons, and we'll do that with our network of unions, social enterprises, and you associate partners. The better we are at pursuing these objectives, the more we will avert that triple whammy I described, and in fact turn adversity into advantage and a concern into strength. A better future is possible, but it never comes from just hoping for the best. That future must be invested in, slogged for, and cherished together. Time is ticking away, and the consequences of our actions or lack of action will become clearer by the day and month. So let's press on resolutely, let's not drop the ball, and we must succeed so that our mature workers and citizens, for them, the future in Singapore will remain one of hope and promise. Mr. Speaker, sir, I support the budget. Thank you.